Alright, I meant to record this last week, but better late than never. These are just some anecdotes I heard from the power cut, El Gran Apagón, in Spain. And if I remember at the end of the video, I'll just speak about some knock-on effects from a power cut, nationwide power cut in this case. Right, I heard someone told me that her friend was at the dentist when the power went out, and I asked her, was your friend in the waiting room? And she said no. So I had this image in my head of some poor woman with her mouth wide open, lying back, the dentist with the drill and all the rest, and then the lights go out, pitch black. A girl, a student, she told me she was in class when the power went out and her teacher was using the interactive whiteboard with a digital pen. And the teacher, she said, had spent about 7 minutes writing up this theorem on the board. And when she'd finished all that writing, she turned around to the class and said, "Now students, let me explain what I've just written here on the whiteboard." And in that moment, the power went out and the theorem disappeared. Everything disappeared off the whiteboard. And this is an example of the fondness that people have in general and society as a whole has for technology. Like, the ordinary whiteboard could be used with markers, but no, they want to use the latest technology. And of course the latest technology can be great once you have electricity, but the symbolism was not lost to me, the idea that this teacher was writing for 7 minutes and then because of a power cut all her 7 minutes of work disappeared and could not be recovered. Likewise, I heard of someone who, this sounds ludicrous, but this person couldn't, it was a woman, she couldn't enter her apartment building and her apartment because she didn't have a key. In order to enter, she needed to scan her phone or something like this, and obviously with the electricity down, the scanner wasn't available, and also the phone networks were down. So she spent 5 or 6 hours out on the street, homeless because of the power cut. I heard of an ice cream shop that was giving away ice cream. Their stock, they didn't have generators obviously, and their stock was melting fast. So I was thinking of that. Imagine if you were the owner of an ice cream shop and all your stock gets destroyed. Like, there's a possibility you might not recover from that. Thousands of euros of ice cream down the Swanee. I heard of pharmacies who had to throw out medicine because it has, certain medicine has to be refrigerated. Big loss of stock there. Heard of a few people dying. I heard of a guy told me his mother-in-law got trapped in a lift for 45 minutes. I heard of someone else who also got trapped in a lift. And the day after the power cut, I noticed, I went out for a jog, and I noticed outside some houses you had vans belonging to electricians who were in sorting things out. So a lot of things went haywire because of the power cut. I think that's really it. So what I want to say at the end of this is that nobody knew what was going on. For a number of hours, people were metaphorically and literally in the dark, and they weren't able to turn on their TVs. There was no internet. Some people had batteries for old radios, so they were able to listen to the radio, whatever radio stations were operating. But the general idea was that no message could come from the top. The government was completely powerless, as in it had no electricity, and also it was not able to convey its propaganda, its message. There was no government. Essentially, there was no government for 5 hours. If you were in a different neighborhood, maybe it was 9 hours. If you were in a different part of Spain, maybe it was for a day and a half. There was no government. And I was thinking how the government doesn't have your back, despite what many people claim. The government doesn't give a toss about you. And when the government screws up, you're at the whim of looters, murderers, the scum of our society. And society will break down very, very quickly because there's nothing holding us together. There's no cohesion. We've even lost the racial cohesion now in multicultural Western Europe. So the government doesn't care about you, and when the government screws up, you pay the price, not really the government. But I was thinking, if this type of thing happens more and more, you get power cuts for a number of days at a time, and the government is hard pressed to keep things under control, there's going to be opportunities. That's the way I look at it. There's going to be a time when people will be able to take out soapboxes and stand on street corners and communicate to the masses ideas, old ideas and new ideas. And there won't be really much the government can do about it, because for the government to maintain its power, it needs electricity, it needs electrical power. I couldn't help but think of that time last year when I was on the bus going from France to Spain. I made a video about it, and how 3 North Africans more or less hijacked the bus, and how the French police wouldn't come. They were called, but they wouldn't come. And when we got to Spain, we were maybe an hour inside Spain at a stop. The police came, but not a single policeman laid a finger on any of the 3 hijackers. They were asked politely to get off the bus, and this took a considerable amount of time for the police to convince the North African hijackers to get off the bus. And then when the North Africans did get off the bus, as our bus was pulling off, the police just stood in a circle chatting amicably to the North Africans. And I was thinking, the government doesn't have our backs. The government doesn't care about us. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. Because in the future, when the infrastructure breaks down, as it will, you only have to read, what was it, Joseph Tainter's The Collapse of Complex Societies. You only have to read that book to know that eventually the system is going to break down. The infrastructure is going to break down. And as I say, there will be ample opportunities to speak to the people and to convince them that the government doesn't have their best interests at heart, that the government doesn't give a toss about them, but that you give a toss about them, and that you can make things better.